through these fields of destruction. Baptisms of fire, I've witnessed your suffering as the battle raged high. And though it hurt me so bad.
Welcome to Voices of the Republic. I'm Mike Chisholm. Thank you for joining me today. I have several guests with me, and we'll be discussing a myriad of topics pertaining to local, state, and nationally. So let's get right to it. With me, I have Steve Blair. Thank you for showing up. Chad Christensen.
Thanks,
How you
Mike.
doing, Chad?
Good, Mike. Thanks.
Mike Todd Hunter.
Pleasure to see you.
And Ron Clayson.
Hello.
What we'd like to first discuss is what's going on in the news today. Let's just talk about what's happening again. Here we have another school shooting in Texas. I'm not sure exactly what part of Texas. I just caught it.
Houston.
Houston. Thank you, Mike. Houston, Texas. That right now is a hot topic. So I'd like to ask the gentlemen here what they think of it. Steve, what do you think about what's going on with the Second Amendment and all these laws that are trying to be passed to help curtail school violence?
The school violence has been in school ever since I was in school over 30 years ago, 35 years ago. At that time, whether it was fighting with fists, knives, guns. They even made guns out of pipes and spare bullets when I was in high school.
Do you think all these new laws are going to help that?
No, not one bit.
What's your opinion, Chad? And Chad, by the way, Chad, where am I? There am I. Chad, by the way, ran for sheriff in Bonneville County. You almost got there too, didn't you?
You know, I was second out of 4 candidates in the primary, so it was a good showing. But next time we'll get there. You know, Steve, said violence has been around for quite some time, and I agree with that. But I also think that, these recent shootings have been an agenda to push gun control in the political format. You know, the Sandy Hook shooting to me is there's so many unanswered questions in that shooting, and inconsistencies with that don't add up. And if you look into it, investigate it a little bit, and you start seeing these problems with the whole story, then you'll see that.
Such as like the AR-15, they say that was actually utilized. Now, according to the first reports, the AR-15, which is the AR platform, was sitting in the vehicle.
Yes, in fact, yeah, it was in the trunk of the vehicle. It was retrieved, and I saw the gun come out on the footage, and it appears to be a shotgun to me, because it's a side breech, and he uses the side handle on the shotgun. Well, I think it's a shotgun. So they're pushing this whole AR-15 story when it's not, in fact, an AR-15 even, is my belief. But it wasn't even used in the school. And they
want to get the assault weapons. The assault weapons. In fact, we all should start calling it defensive weapons, not assault weapons anymore. Right?
Oh, definitely.
That's what I would think. Ron, what do you think about this?
I just heard about this about an hour ago, so I haven't had a chance to. I'm not up to speed, but there certainly is an increasing incidence of these shootings and violence in the schools, and the gun. The thing that I'm most concerned about here would be the violence, like in the video games and the movies and all of those types of things. Where it seems like that's where the kids is getting it from. There's a different mindset now than, and yes, I remember a few fights when I was in high school and that, but there does appear to be a different mindset.
Big
now.
Difference from Space Invaders to real graphic violence on these things.
To where playing a game they're rewarded for seeing blood splattered all over the place. In the course of playing their game, and there's a huge difference between that and playing, like you say, Alien Space Invaders or something like that. And so the problem goes a lot deeper than the gun control, which I am not a believer in the gun control as anything that's going to solve this problem.
Well, they say it's not the gun. I believe more vehicles kill Americans.
There's
You know,
Dozens
just using
of
that
things.
as an example.
Yeah, there's dozens of things that kill more people than guns.
Mike, what's your opinion?
Well, you know, I'm going to have to come at it from a different angle. Of course, I was a public school teacher for 34 years, and I coached for 30 years. And if you believe in behavioral psychology, then you have to believe that really it's not bad genetics, it's the environment. Well, then what is the environment? Today we see the breakup of the homes, the lack of the values, structure, support systems, drugs, and
Rampant.
coming from Inland Empire in Southern California, I've been here in Idaho for 5 years, drugs is a major cause of the escalation of violence. It's difficult, you know, when a kid comes up to you and says, "I can make more money dealing drugs than you in 1 week than you can teaching in a year," and they don't have to go home and study, they don't have to put in the hours, and they can get that fast money. It's hard to answer other than, well, I guess you just don't value your freedom. Mental illness is a huge problem. There's been a movement now to protect the mentally ill with privacy rights, and there's a real disconnect between, you know, people on the ground and the issuing of gun permits. Although I feel pretty confident that if a person wanted to get a gun, they could get a gun. They don't have to do it through the legal process. Chad probably knows more about that than I do. Crime is down. Major crime is down.
And that's reported by the FBI.
And so when we're talking here, it's almost like we're talking to a mirror image of our own opinions. And unless we can really deal with family issues, drug issues, and mental illness, I don't really see what you can do. You know, I'm a military brat, and you know, I remember the first conversation I had with my father that if somebody really wanted to kill somebody on an airplane, maybe they could bring a box cutter, but you know, you could do it with a pen, you could do it with a grocery bag. There's plenty of ways to take somebody out if you're determined to do that.
Your shoelaces.
Yeah, but I would like to say personally, it is, in my opinion, in the environment. And a gun is an inanimate object. It's almost something that can be ignored when you're really talking about what causes violent individuals to behave and act out. And so, you know, you don't hear people discussing this because it's politically incorrect to say that the family's breaking up, that we have an immense drug problem, and that we have a mental illness issue that needs to be addressed.
Well, you discussed mental illness, and I'll ask the rest of the panel, I guess. Could we call it the panel? I guess we could. When you say mental illness, and when we say, you know, they're going to do better, you know, I guess more in-depth background checks, and they're going to say, well, if you're on something to sleep, like what's the big thing now? What's the thing to make you sleep? Well, you know, diazepam. What's that big thing? Ambien.
Ambien.
Yeah.
Or you're taking anything for depression. I think it's too broad well, if you got mental illness, man, we're going to take your guns away. What do you think, Steve?
Well, they say that over 46% of Americans are going to have some form of mental problem at one point in their life.
Some people would say, I have a mental problem to be on TV.
Exactly. But,
Hey, we're all on TV.
you know, there's, you know, everybody, I've heard a couple of doctors here in town who have been practicing for over 30 years who have stated they need to put Prozac in every city's water system. So,
Such like
you know,
fluoride.
yeah, like fluoride, you know, and that's control of everybody. You know, everybody needs to have their mood elevated.
It deadens your senses.
Pardon me?
It deadens your senses, is what
Yeah,
it does.
it deadens your sentences or alters your point of view.
And with that broad, I mean, what do you think, Chad? That broad, I mean, anyone, I would think anyone could be, they could say, sorry, you can no longer own a firearm. What do you think?
Well, he brought up a good point about mental illness, and I agree with that, and it needs to be addressed. You know, I do part-time, you know, work with kids. You know, it's called PSR, and and some kids that I work with.
What's PSR, Chad?
PSR is psychosocial rehab.
Okay.
So I did that part-time with kids, and I enjoy that. And for example, these two kids that I work with told me that their mom watched Ted with them, the
movie Ted?
Movie Ted, which
Yeah.
is very vulgar, and
It is.
And you know, for kids that are 8 years old or 6 years old and 10 years old to be watching that with their mother, is very concerning to me. That today, society is like that today in the family setting.
No morals.
No morals, and it's concerning to me, and it's frustrating that you see this in society, that they allow their kids to see these kind of movies and a breakdown of values like you mentioned, and I totally agree with that. But one problem I see is if the federal government starts mandating that that certain people don't get firearms because of their mental health problems, that's dangerous ground to me. If you take some liberty from people, they'll start taking more and more. So like you were saying, they'll target half the people in this country on mental problems.
Well, how many people are on medication has taken it one time in the past or not? I mean, if they want to go that broad, that's pretty bad. Ron, what do you think?
The end game that scares me on this would be what if at some point a person was considered incompetent because they didn't agree, and this might be looked at as conspiratorial, but the idea of if you don't agree with the government on something, then you're insane.
That's Belafonte's point of view.
And somewhere between that and looking out for the true person that does have some issues, and I've known people that way, that there has to be some common sense there, and there really does not appear to be a lot. They're trying to legislate common sense, and that doesn't happen.
That's impossible. That's impossible, Mike.
Well, this whole thing about mental illness now, there are some obvious cases like schizophrenia. I mean, not everybody dressing up like Batman and this sort of thing, but there's they call the trifecta, that kids could be identified early. As a school teacher, you can almost pick those kids out by the time they're 14, 15 years old, the ones that are going to be a problem. The trifecta is they're killing animals.
Yeah.
Torturing and killing animals.
That's a big indicator.
Bedwetting.
I didn't know about bedwetting.
Absolutely. Because it has to deal with autonomy, self-control, and everyone seeks control of some sort in their lives. That if you can't get control of your own life, then you seek control of other situations and other people. Problems in school and identifiable violent behavior early in life. It's almost that if you really wanted to pursue this in earnest, that at least you could establish some sort of behavioral program to deal with these kids in more of an institutional setting. And I'm not talking about a psych ward, but maybe something in between leaving them at home and getting them professional help. And then, at least it's a marker that you can begin with. But I don't think it has to be an all or nothing thing. When you're defining mental illness and we're talking about prescription drug use through a doctor, I don't think that constitutes a mental illness. It sounds like it's something treatable. Another issue that you have is if you're dealing with people that have mental illness and they've been prescribed medications, how do we ensure that they stay on their medications? This is a big problem.
That's a very good point, yes.
And so, short of a massive government state, I don't know how you prevent that. I almost think that, and I would say there has to be some parameters in trying to identify people. But in a free society that has a Second Amendment, and I think that you actually have to expect that there is a certain level of violence. Keeping it in perspective, more kids die in the city of Chicago, Obama's hometown, than die all year in Afghanistan.
Yeah, and it's got the strictest gun laws in the United States.
And it's got very strict gun laws. So now, how do you deal with that without dealing with the causes? Some of the things we mentioned, the family, the drugs, and the mental illness issue. It just has to be done.
I just think it was a really broad thing. It's very broad, and I don't know if the audience out there agrees with me or not. I think it's too broad, and I think a lot of the methods, and I'll say it on live TV, I think a lot of the methods is similar to, and boy, I'm sure I'll get in hot water for this, similar to that of Nazi Germany from '39, and how the dictators and how various people came into power. They wanted to control the firearms. Let's move on to another subject. Maybe we'll come back to that. Let's talk about another hot subject. They call it Obamacare, which is the affordable health. What do you think about that?
I think that it was something that had good intentions, that was overly simplified, thrown out to the public with a desire for massive help, that everybody wanted their 2 cents thrown in, but was just a big mess and no control.
Do you think that what is it, 7,000 pages or 2,500
No,
pages?
it's 2,197 pages.
So 2,197 pages. You think
I'm
that
still
that was,
reading
that
it.
was just prepared overnight? I think
Well,
this
a
was
lot
well in
of
the
it
works
hasn't
for a
even
long
been
time.
written yet. Some of that was just a broad outline, and the specifics, because the devil's always in the detail, are going to be written later, and nobody knows what's fully there.
Yeah.
What do you think, Chad? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh, sorry.
Obamacare to me is totally unconstitutional. It forces a citizen to pay for medical care, pay for something that they don't want to pay for. To me, forcing a citizen to do anything is against my liberty and my freedom.
Do you think the Supreme Court will rule in our favor? It's still up at the Supreme Court.
SCOTUS is, I
No.
think, bought and paid for. That's
But
my personal opinion.
in our system, we have to respect the ruling of the Supreme Court. And basically what Roberts said was, and there's a logic to it, you can disagree with it, but in our system it's the final say. He said that it is a tax, and then there's, if you want to call it a mandate, but it's a tax. The Congress voted for it. The House appropriates money. If it was written as a statute law, if it's going to be changed, then it has to be changed as statute law. And he said if the people didn't like it, they could vote it down in the November election, and the people didn't vote it down. So, we can be unhappy with it, but the majority rules. The Supreme Court, through judicial review, had ruled that the crux of it was constitutional. Now, whether or not the issues relating to religious liberty are constitutional, mandating contraception, is another issue. But on the fundamental issue of statute law, I don't see how you can disagree with it, because it was passed by the Congress, the will of the people.
You just said a majority rules, which I have a problem with. We live in a republic, and my right is guaranteed by the Constitution.
What right?
My right to not pay for something or be mandated.
But there's a lot of things. You're a police officer. There's a lot of things you pay for that you may not like.
Yeah, but see, that's the problem when a person opens a business and the Bible allows you to set up your business and run it in a code that you see fit with the Lord. The Lord tells you how to run your business that is worthy, and you run it in essence that is in loving primary for life and production, and not to hurt anybody or hurt your neighbors, and to provide for everybody. And that means that you don't destroy life. Okay? So you put your mandate down, and if you want someone to work for you, they have to agree, if they want to be employed by you, to work with that mandate, or they don't work for you.
So in a way, with I guess maybe I'm looking at it wrong.
So you don't pay for abortions. That's what it is.
And that's one of the problems with Obamacare, right?
Yeah.
One of the
These
major
companies
problems.
don't want, small companies, small family businesses say, I'm not going to pay for the RU486 pills. I'm not going to pay for an abortion unless it's a cost of life measure,
But
type of situation.
Gentlemen, isn't the bottom line, they're pushing something on us such as like taxes. I mean, our country was founded getting away from being overtaxed or taxation without representation. By implementing this, it's like if you don't have insurance, you're going to have to get insurance or you get a fine. What do you think, Ron? He's been really quiet. Usually, Ron's the talker, guys. And he's been quiet.
I'm the quiet one. I'll go with that. Take a little bit different tack here. Any of you who buys your own health insurance, I would ask you to ask yourself, are your rates going up or down? It doesn't really seem to be solving. It's not solving any of the problems. I work in the insurance and financial business, and I'm going to be a little bit more critical than what Steve was here when he said he thought a lot of people had good intentions with it. And granted, I'm sure there are people that do have good intentions with it, but I think it was basically a power play when it came right down to it. And an example of that would be 10 years ago when we would be talking to an employer or an individual about health insurance, particularly employers. You'd spend 5 minutes talking about laws, and then 95% of your time was talking about coverages and getting the job done for that employer and his employees. Now, you'll go out and you'll spend 95% of your time talking about laws and maybe 5% of your time talking about coverages, and that does no good for the employer, it does no good for the employee, it does no good for society, in my opinion. I see it as a power play.
Well, my disagreements are really
I like your disagreements,
that
Mike.
it's not
we
working.
talk a lot off camera.
Yeah.
We go to meetings. I like your stuff.
It's not working.
You don't
And
think
the
so?
whole thing, the Affordable Care Act, is ridiculous. And Ron is absolutely right. Anybody that's tried to purchase insurance has seen it. I know in our particular case, I'm retired on a fixed income, our rates have almost tripled over the last 3 or 4 years. It's just, it's Orwellian to call it the Affordable Care Act. And I have a whole list of disagreements here. First off, if you're going to increase, this is Economics 101, if you're going to increase the demand of health care by 32 million people without increasing the supply, you're going to have an increase in cost. The idea that the government could micromanage 1/6 of the economy and deal with the unintended consequences, given its track record for everything that the government has mandated financially, is preposterous. It's not based on an incentive system. If I go to the gym, I work out, I watch what I eat, I pay the same rate as somebody stays home and eat bonbons. That's not right.
But Twinkies no longer
So
available.
how could you encourage a healthy society if there's no personal cost to your indiscretions? So that doesn't work. First off, there was no malpractice reform, and there was no tort reform. I have several doctor friends that are all telling me that they have to belong to a hospital in order to get group rates to be able to afford to stay in business. That wasn't dealt with because the Democrats are in cahoots with the trial lawyers, and that is a big player as far as their contributions. The idea that we need an entitlement when we can't even pay for the ones we have, to add another layer of debt on, is another problem that I have with.
Let me ask you
Go
this,
ahead.
Mike. Let's ask you, all you guys, this. With this being thrusted upon us, this Obamacare, do you think it's all part of a big plan? Some people would say it's a conspiracy theory or something to destroy our economy. What do you think our economy's at? And shifting gears a little, we'll get back to Obamacare.
Sure. Yeah, definitely would. In my opinion, I have seen absolutely nothing that has been an attempt to repair our economy in the last 4.5 years. I have seen regulation upon regulation that has stifled our economy, our businesses, for reinvestment, for training, for building, and there is absolutely no reason for businesses to expand. They're being forced to close their purse strings and go elsewhere. I mean, they have raised the tax on business so high, it's the highest in the world now.
I've talked to a lot of local businesses and a lot of business owners, and they tell me, and just like everyone out there, they tell me they're barely getting by because of the increased taxes and the increased regulations. Chad, what's your...
Well, I agree with that. My friend, his family owns a eye care business in Minnesota, and they closed their doors. Well, they didn't close their doors, they sold out to a bigger company because they could afford Obamacare's taxes. And so, yeah, it's harming our economy even more. This whole agenda thing here, and I think you're right about that. I think there's an agenda here to control the public and the citizens of this country even more and more. Obamacare, gun control, everything, all these regulations from the EPA, and there's just so much out there that we've been bombarded with in regulation. And yet to think, there is an agenda here from powers that be, I believe, and that they want to control us more. And Steve was saying the economy isn't being fixed; it's getting worse and worse. And there's an agenda here to crash the economy, I believe, and start over and to control us and to enslave us, even more so than we already are. Right now, I believe we're enslaved bad enough with income tax and all these taxes that we're paying out, and which support the Federal Reserve's interest.
And they're sending the money overseas to support.
Exactly. Sure.
And I'm definitely not a person about sending money overseas to support a foreign country who doesn't give a patoot about us. Ron, what do you think?
It always takes me a minute to put my thoughts together here after
but your thoughts are great.
Go ahead, Mike.
Mike.
I'll come back in a minute.
Well, I don't really think anybody seriously thinks that Obama's concerned about the economy. If it is, it's peripheral. Its issue is not growing the economy. It's the social justice thing. And if you look at the State of the Union address, if I'm not mistaken, there was almost nothing said about the economy. It was almost version 2 of Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech. But the dream was about everybody. It was a socialist dream about each according to his needs, each according to his ability, and it was there was really, and I know of no examples of a socialist economy that has a successful economy, and we're witnessing the collapse of Europe as we witness the collapse of our own country. The social democracies can't afford these entitlements that the government seems to be giving out. I see nothing in his record that says he even knows anything about economics. His job council hasn't met in the last year.
Yeah.
There's nothing in his training. He had never ran a business. There's nothing in his training that indicates he knows anything about business. If he got his economics from his socialist friends, then you have to figure he's running a socialist agenda, which is exactly what we got. We got tax increases at the beginning of the year. We didn't get spending cuts, and we're continuing with trillion-dollar deficits. He has made no proposals to reform the entitlements. So I think he just figures that they can ask the private sector to dig deeper, and that everything will still remain the same. It's kind of like whistling through a graveyard.
He's a great orator.
Well, talk doesn't walk, right?
That's true.
See, right now, all these people out here, not all these people, but there are a lot of people out here saying, well, these Republicans are stifling the Democrats, keeping them from doing anything with the economy. Well, I'd just like to point out, I will give $100 for anybody that can prove to me that there has been one senator that has voted to pass the budget since 2009. Just one. I'll give $100.
That's a good point, Steve.
Yeah.
Wow. Ron?
Okay, I do have
That
a
is a
comment.
good point, Steve.
Thank you. I do have a comment back on this, on the health insurance issue and my previous comment about the power issue. A couple months ago, I went to a meeting that one of the local insurance companies here in Idaho had presented, and it was kind of funny because they were trying to explain things that they don't have guidance on, and in one sense they did just kind of throw up their hands and say, oh, we don't know about this, how it's going to shake out. But they were making a valiant effort at trying to explain where they thought things were going. One of the things that will happen is it does appear that the rates will go up, but yet there's credits being given back to individuals and also could be given back to an employer to offset the increased rates, and hopefully maybe leave them the same as what they were before. But why go to that expense money-wise? Why go to that expense effort-wise? It comes back to a control issue is the only reason to do that. If they're going to leave it the same, why not just leave the insurance, employee benefits issue between the employer, the employee, and the companies,
And the government stick their nose out of it.
rather than be out of it. And there is some guidance that's necessary. I mean, I'm not going to say that all regulations have to go away.
Yeah, you got to have it.
But there's a power grab going on, and that's I think that I still would come back and say I think that's what it's all about.
How long, shifting gears a little, but staying somewhat in the same topic, we're at what, 16 trillion?
16 and a half.
16 and a half trillion in debt.
Yeah.
How long do you think?
108% of the GDP.
Right, which is incredible.
It's worse than Greece and Spain, to give you an idea.
Then how are we continuing to float without being like a third world country? Is it because the dollar is a
because
worldwide
we're
currency?
we're the best rotten apple in the bucket. But part of it was Spain and Greece can't issue debt because they're a part of the EU, so the EU would have to issue that, and that's a problem. As with the Federal Reserve Board now, we can issue debt, and of course the problem is, and I actually had a whole list of things about this, is that there's some real effects here when you devalue your currency, when you're printing funny money, because any devaluation is like a tax increase. You have reduced purchasing power. The other thing is, on a grand scale, when you're talking about the government budget, then whatever the interest rate is on the debt, and I think now it's greater than it's greater than the defense budget, it's greater than Social Security, Medicare, it's greater than any education budget, that is